To remember this day 40 years ago when 100 Vietnam veterans from the 50 states arrived here with shovels. We broke ground for something unique and from which would flow healing for many military veterans and indeed for the nation.
So my favorite way to experience this wall is to go to the statues first and look at the faces of the statues, the confusion, the wariness, the fatigue, the youth, the vulnerability, the camaraderie, the worry. Frederick Hart was emulating in his artistry with his detail of the gear and the fatigues and the water bottle and the weapon. The great sculpture of the Middle Ages, Gian Lorenzo Bernini, whose angels were on the Ponte Sant'Angelo in Rome. As these soldiers look at the wall, they are the witness. They're the symbol, the metaphor. They're us. They're witness to a magnitude of loss that's almost incomprehensible. They remember friends and comrades and mourn them. They are the survivors, the lucky ones. There by the grace of God go I. As Jan said, this is called the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. Yes, veterans living and dead have first possession on this, they and their loved ones. There have been more touching scenes here since 1962 than perhaps any place in the world. My touch is on panel 73. With time, though, this has become far more than a veterans memorial. The soldiers are witness to the dilemma of an entire Vietnam generation that was faced with a terrible choice to serve or to avoid service, to serve a deeply flawed cause eventually, or to avoid a central duty of citizenship, to be silent or to witness the moral duty to protest. So the memorial is for the veterans, first and foremost, but it's also for that whole generation, those who protested against the magnitude of loss, against the military and political decisions, and against the march of folly, as historian Barbara Tuchman has called it. The resistors had an important role in stopping the carnage. The three soldiers are also a witness to history. We know now from the Pentagon Papers that LBJ knew the war was hopeless and unwinnable in 1967, and yet he persisted. He worried about his legacy, his place in history. He worried about not becoming the first American president to lose a war, and so the loss continued, the loss in the thousands. We know now from history and from scholarship that Richard Nixon undermined LBJ's peace efforts in 1968 for his own political gain. His slow withdrawal caused another 20,000 lives. And so as these facts come out over time, the poignancy of the soldier and of the soldiers and of the three soldiers has become more. The dialogue between the leader, the cause, and the soldier is an eternal dialogue. And the emotional issue is between the validity of the cause and the duty to obey. The leaders of that time were obsessed with the domino theory. Maya Lin took account of the domino theory. Her original design for this, for her floating wall, imagined stones cascading down this slope. They were the dominoes to her, the dominoes coming to her chevron And she imagined initially in Yale at her course in funerary art that the names would also be on the stones, the dominoes. We know also, as time has gone by, that the communist country of Vietnam is now a valued ally of the United States, a bulwark against the spread of China. What are the three soldiers supposed to think about that? They are the witness to that transformation as well. The memory of the Vietnam War is receding, but the visitation to this memorial has not slackened. Why is that? Within the hordes that come here, many are born after Vietnam. Couples pushing baby carriages who are born long after Vietnam was over. But the three soldiers have an answer to that. They have watched this place become universal and timeless, relevant now as much as it was in 1982, relevant in 100 years from now as well. It is relevant to all of the world, not just to America. At this very moment, we witness another world leader obsessed with his legacy, wreaking havoc. It's the same old story. Casualties sometimes seem like the last consideration. For every death, we are told, as a rule of thumb, there are 3 times as many wounded. That would make the figure for Vietnam somewhere around 180,000. The soldiers also have become witness to the power of art. This memorial was born, as Jan said, in a ferocious 5-year art war. Paul Spyregan is here as well, deeply involved in that. Art critics, soldiers, congressmen, senators, presidential candidates fought over its winning design. And Jan Scruggs stood there in the fray, nurtured and massaged and conciliated between these forces brilliantly, and kept his end goal in mind. Jan and the soldiers have watched how art distills 13 messy years of history and distills it into an essence. And you see here the essence behind us. It has become a spiritual place, a place for contemplation, a place for wonder, but also a place to teach. It's a place also for literature. Listen to Maya Lin's entry in the contest with over 1,200 competitors. She imagined a rift in the earth, a polished black granite chevron wall that would emerge and recede into the landscape. She wrote, "Walking into this grassy site, we can barely make out the carved names upon the walls. But there is a sense of overwhelming numbers. The names are in the order they died in Vietnam, so that the wall becomes a chronicle of the war from the first to the last casualty." And then this, "It is up to each visitor, each witness, I would say, to come to terms with this loss, for death is a personal and private matter." And listen to the words of Frederick Hart. In his edition, he hoped for unity and completion and acceptance. And he, in his submission of his statues, wrote, "The gesture and expression of the figures are directed to the wall, affecting an interplay between image and metaphor. The tension between the two elements creates a resonance that echoes from one to the other. I see the wall as a kind of ocean, a sea of sacrifice that is overwhelming and nearly incomprehensible in its sweep of names. I place these figures upon the shore of that sea, gazing upon it, standing vigil before it, reflecting the human face of it." In the end, it was the poetry of their words, as well as the power of their imagination, that won them their commissions.